Today's sermon is titled Beavers and Why They Matter, to be delivered by Audrey Taub. Audrey was raised in the Hudson River Valley in New York State, the hometown of folk singer and river steward Pete Seeger. Unbeknownst to her, she was steeped in a culture of stewardship for our waterways. She graduated from SUNY Potsdam with an MA in mathematics, worked for Goldman Sachs and Company in downtown Manhattan before realizing the materialistic American dream was not her dream. Audrey moved to Washington State and became a student of the Wilderness Awareness School, where she trained as a naturalist and nature mentor. There, Audrey met Gilbert Joaquin Bowl, a Lakota elder, who provided an indigenous perspective to her life. In 2005, she moved to SLO County and currently resides in Atascadero near the Salinas River with her husband and 3 children. She currently works for All Good, a Morro Bay-based company, and is in charge of manufacturing the All Good Goop product. In 2019, Audrey founded the Slow Beaver Brigade at a discussion with friends around climate change and more specifically, how we can contribute to climate regeneration. Starting the brigade was her gift back to the wetlands that have given her so much to her over her lifetime. I give you Audrey.
Thank you, Randy. Let me share my screen. Okay. There we go. Well, good morning. I really appreciate the invite today. Yeah, this is quite special. So beavers and why they matter, and the Slow Beaver Brigade, and we've just been around for 1 year. And our mission is really to educate our county that beavers live here, and it's a good thing. And I also want to point out that I'm not a scientist. I'm just a citizen who really enjoys being outside. Yeah, so let me begin. I really enjoy taking people out to the Beaver Dam complexes right here in Atascadero, and they're right on, the edge, the city limits of Atascadero, or some beautiful beaver complexes. And there's a photographer, Donald Quintana. You may know him. He's Los Osos native. And he took a liking to the Beaver Brigade and spent some time photographing, and he made this short video. So I wanted to share this to start, kind of immerse you as best we can in this setting in the beaver environment here. I'll be quiet so you can hear the bird song and just experience them for a moment. Oops. Okay. I really like that video. It really captures the water there and the beaver behavior and using its tail to alarm its family. And okay, so let's see. So the history, beavers were almost completely wiped out of North America. And prior to that, they were almost completely wiped out of Europe. And the reason is because of their fur was used to make hats. And the picture on the right shows all the different styles of beaver hats. The fur of beavers is really, really dense, so it felt really nicely. So it was the preferred style. Many years ago. So it was estimated that there was anywhere between 60 to 400 million beavers just in North America. And I think about that number, especially 400 million, because that's, how many people there are here. And imagine if there were that many beavers, how wet this country must have been. Um, and then after the trappers and the California fur rush, it was reduced, the estimating down to 100,000 beavers. And there was just so many stories of the Hudson Bay Company in Canada wanting to I think their word was create a fur desert in the West, so to kind of slow the movement of the Europeans across the continent. Uh, didn't want America to grow quite so big. So there was a lot of removal of beavers. And back in 1911, there were 11 known colonies, and a colony is a family. So that's 11 families of beaver in the entire state of California. And the tide started to turn about then. Was starting to become aware that the beavers actually were helping, and so there was a reintroduction effort in the, I think it was in the 1930s, where they started to reintroduce beavers. And that lasted for maybe 10 years before agriculturalists were like, wait a minute, it's a rodent, we need to um, we need to be able to kill beavers on our property. And at that point, you could start to apply for a permit to eradicate your beavers. And that is still alive today. There's a number of resources to read these pretty colorful stories of the trapping of the beavers. Um, the really sad thing is that a lot of our fish and wildlife regulations are based on this understanding that beavers don't live here and this idea that beavers aren't native to California. So, because of that, in 2013, a number of groups got together and began gathering evidence, and they published in the California Fish and Game, as it was called then, journal, a new historical range map. And they got this range map by speaking to native folks and learning the names of beavers, and lots of sites were named after beavers in this area. There were actual dams found, and they carbon dated back many, many, many years. And so they were able to see that beavers actually did live in all these areas. Um, and this is much expanded range than, like, if you were to pick up a Peterson field guide and look at the range map of beavers, it's surprising how like our area is not included in that range map when clearly they do live here. Okay, so beavers, here's that photo from Donald Quintana. I've been really enjoying his work. Um, so beavers, they live in family groups. They live with their families, and that typically means the two adults, the two mating husband and wife pair, and then they have kits. Currently, right now, in our Atascadero Beaver Complex that we are monitoring, we have several game cameras out, and there we've so far seen two baby kits, probably born in May. They first We first saw them on the beaver camera the last week in May, and it was just this little puff of fur. So sweet. So they live with their kits, and then the two beavers that were born last year are now helping out in raising these two new ones. And sometimes there'll be two still around from the previous year. But we think those two have actually moved on in our family. So we think we have six beavers. It's super hard to tell them apart, even the males from the females. Their organs are inside, so you can't tell unless you actually capture them. Um, and or if the nursing mom, you can tell at certain times of year. So they typically have from 2 to 4 young. And like I said, in this beaver complex that we're watching right now, they've only had two each year. Typical weight is 60 pounds. I have read that they actually keep growing. So the older they get, the bigger they get. And the most distinctive features of the beaver are the tail, the webbed feet, and the teeth. And the tail is like a rudder, it's a big, flat, scaly thing. You wouldn't really expect it on a mammal. And as you saw in the video, they use it as an alarm system. So they slap the water whenever they are feeling stressed or they think danger's around, so that their family knows not to come out of the lodge. Typically, when I'm out there and if they slap their tail, I typically leave at that point because now I'm stressing them out. Um, and their back feet is at least twice, probably 3 times as big as their front hands. They have little hands, almost like a raccoon, 5 toes. And then the back feet are so large and they're webbed. They're just like little flippers. And to see them, I've seen some footage of underwater beavers swimming, and it's amazing how graceful and fast and beautiful they are. And then you see them walk on land, and they just kind of waddle. You could just tell um, they are in danger because they couldn't run fast to get away from anything. Um, and then their teeth, they are rodents, so they have those two big rodent teeth on top and two big on the bottom, and they're like this distinctive orange color. And there's iron in the enamel. So as they're chewing trees, it tends to wear the inside of their teeth down faster than that very orange enamel, so that it automatically sharpens their teeth. And here they are again. This is, you can see a little bit the back foot and how large it is. So they eat tree bark. And, when I first heard that, I knew they were vegetarian and ate trees, but I almost wondered if they were opportunists. And then I started to see their scat in the water, and it's just piles of sawdust. And I was like, they really do only eat bark. It's true. Um, and they have I guess a clear set of eyelids that shut when they go underwater, so they're able to swim. They also have a second set of lips behind their big four large chewing teeth, so that they don't ingest the water. And again, in the beaver cam footage we have of them, they spend a lot amount of time just grooming their fur because it spreads the oil and makes it waterproof. So a good portion of their day is on the dam, and it's usually like two or three of them, and they're grooming each other because they have to get to the back, their backs where they can't reach. So they're all together taking care of each other's fur, which is really endearing to witness. So, what do beavers do? This is kind of, see if I can move this. Not the best graphic, but I couldn't really find a better one. So on the left side of this graphic, it shows a stream that doesn't have a beaver. And what you notice about streams that don't have beavers is they're usually a thin, skinny line of water. And what happens is it tends to get in size. So it's deep. From the side of the water is usually deep until the water of the stream. And the flows, when we have the seasonal high rains, tend to cause even more erosion and rush more of that stream bed or the banks out so that it gets even deeper and deeper and deeper. And and that it just starts to this cascading effect of dryness on the landscape. If you notice, the graphic on the left is more, it's yellow. It shows there's not a lot of plant life around there. um, and then the beavers come and build a dam, and so over on the right side is um, the first thing they do in a stream is build a dam, and that floods an area. And then they'll build another dam and flood a little more. And the whole point of the dam is to give them safe passage to their food. So they want to get to the trees and they don't want to get out of the water because they're really slow and awkward on the water. So if a predator came, they're really easily picked off. But if they're in the water, they're incredible swimmers. So that's what the dams do. They create safety. Now, in other parts of the country, like Colorado, they don't always build a dam because they're in a big lake. They actually don't need um, further expansion of their water. So the dams they only seem to build where when they need it. And in the same way, they don't build lodges typically in on a river. At least in this area, it's very rare to see a lodge. What they do is they dig a hole in the side of the riverbank, and they kind of burrow out inside there. And so they'll have these bank dens, they're called, and they live in there. And they'll have a dry spot, and that's where they have their young. That's where they sleep during the day. Um, okay, so back to the graphic. This beautiful wetland. So a healthy um, waterway looks more like a wetland. The beavers dig out all of these side channels along the water so that the water just spreads further and further out, and the green, the plants around a beaver complex are just so green, even in the midst of a drought. The area around a beaver complex is just thriving and green and full of bird song. And there's a common, I guess it's a permaculture saying about water: slow it, spread it, sink it. And that's what beavers automatically do. They're slowing the flow of water. They're spreading it out and allowing the water to sink down and recharge our aquifers. Another benefit of all these series of dams is that each dam filters some silt out of the water. So the water actually gets cleaner and cleaner. And there are new studies coming out about the purifying effects of beaver dams, and which is really fascinating. Oops. So fire. Um, we are super lucky right now because a local researcher from CSU Channel Islands, Dr. Emily Fairfax, is studying the beaver complex here in Atascadero. And she has done a lot of research on fire and beavers. If you ever look her up, Dr. Emily Fairfax has created some wonderful YouTube, like 2-minute demonstrations about how beaver are helpful in fires, and they're really enjoyable. But this photo was made from Dr. Joseph Wheaton from Utah State University, and he also studied fire, the effects of beaver dams or beaver complexes, which is just a series of beaver dams for wildlife. And you can see both of them studied these large scale. This is not a little wildfire. This is 65,000 acres um, in Idaho, and it just devastated the landscape. But the beaver complex remained relatively untouched. And what this means is that this is where all the wildlife can go, and this is where they could wait out the fire. They even took air, I'm not exactly sure how, but air temperatures during the wildfire, and they learned that the temperature above the beaver complex never got above 120 degrees, which is still hot but livable. And that's really encouraging. And additionally, these areas provide a beaver break, fire break, because water doesn't burn, and the really wet plants, um, especially if there's not enough of a beaver complex that it's large enough, can prevent the fire from jumping to the other side, and that's super encouraging for us in California. So beavers in drought. This is a graphic from Dr. Fairfax. She studied, now looking at, well, what happens beneath the surface around a beaver complex. And on the left side, it shows a stream without beavers. And you can see the stream on groundwater, the deep water table. And you can see the roots of the vegetation during a drought. They will pretty much dry out. They won't be able to reach the groundwater at all. Whereas when there's beavers on a stream, they build these channels, and it's hard to see on the right side, but there's little pockets of water in between the plants, and those are the channels the beavers built. And so the groundwater stays really high, and so the roots of the plants can reach the water even in a drought. So um, the area around a beaver pond, you really can't tell you're in a drought. And this was taken in August of last year, and we've been leading walks out to the Beaver Dam complex in Atascadero with Dr. Emily Fairfax, which is super fun. But on the right side, there's our walk from the parking area to the Beaver Dam in August. It was probably 100, maybe 103 that day, and you can tell it's like crispy, it's dry. It's a typical North County scene. And yet, on the left side, once we arrived there, this is August, and it's 100 degrees, but not above the beaver, not when you're standing knee deep in a river, in a beaver pond. And it's just beautiful. It just got greener and greener and greener, regardless that the rest of the area was getting drier and drier and drier. And beavers are a keystone species. These are some of the photos we've taken out there. The dragonfly. So many families of wood ducks are so sweet to see. There's um, babies right now, ducklings. And you can see they'll start out to be like 8 or 9 little ducklings, and now there's like 3 or 4 little ducklings. So it's tough to be a duck. Occasionally on our beaver cam, I was just looking yesterday from last week, and there's a really happy bobcat with this big duck in its mouth. So it's hard to be a duck out there. Oops. The eggs were of the red-winged blackbirds nesting out there, and the pied-billed grebe was the smaller one. I don't know how to go backwards on these slides. So um, this is a graphic from the Martinez beavers. One thing I should mention, when we started the Slow Beaver Brigade and started really researching, I kind of had been visiting this beaver complex for so many years. I could see the benefits, but I didn't really have any like scientific facts to back up what I could visually see. So when we started the Beaver Brigade, I started researching and found out there's really this beaver movement in this country. And a big player in this movement are this Martinez Beavers group. And Heidi Perryman is this spearheaded this group up there. They had a situation where there was a stream right in downtown Martinez, and she tells this story of sitting at Starbucks in the morning and watching the beavers build the dam. And it's just so fascinating. So the whole town kind of rallied to support the beavers because they got so involved with watching the families grow, and the town was really worried about flooding. So it was a controversy. But um, this is their I guess, I don't know, motto. The beaver isn't just an animal, it's an ecosystem. And I love that because it shows all the creatures that are dependent on the beaver dam. So just to summarize their benefits, they're ecological engineers, and that basically means they just create the environments. If we tried to create this environment on the right, we would need, a backhoe, and I don't even know, a bulldozer or 10, I don't know. And they know how to do it themselves. There are keystone species. There's a ton of species that are dependent upon them. They provide wildlife breaks and refugia. They store water on the land, and they slow the waters down. So once a big flood event happens, they'll hit one dam, and normally a flood will take out a dam. It's not a permanent structure, but it'll slow it down. And the next dam, it'll slow down even more and slow down even more. So the more developed a complex is, the less impact the flood will have. And at the same time, the weight of this pond is pushing water into our groundwater, recharging our aquifers, and also improving our water quality. So, which I find this so amazing. What do we worry about here in California? Wildfire, drought, flood, the Paso River water basin, Paso Robles water basin, and water quality. And what do beavers do? They help in all those areas. So we have really started to educate our county on the benefits of beavers, and and I say that because they very few people who even grow up here, especially in North County, have no idea that beavers live here. And what we see a lot of times are the riverways are used for all-terrain vehicles. The beaver dams are kind of knocked out if the water gets too deep, and messing with the access of the ATVs. We have pulled dead beaver that apparently shot. So there's still this idea of, wow, it's a rodent, it's a nuisance, let's get rid of it. It's blocking the water, this is bad. And so there seems to be a need for a lot of education. Um, and the picture on the right is another area we're recently started to get involved in, is restoration projects using human built beaver dams, and they're called beaver dam analogs. And basically, you build a dam just like a beaver would. Everything's impermanent and will wash out, and it's all made with woody debris that's found nearby. And the idea is to start to allow the benefits and restoration benefits that beavers provide when you don't have beavers. And the hope is usually that a beaver is going to move in and start to maintain it, because you don't want to have to start paying people to maintain these things 24/7, and they'll never be as good as a beaver. I have a quick video we made for the California Beaver Summit, and this is a lot of what the Beaver Brigade is up to, and I'll just let it speak for itself.
We're here, we're just trying to give the beavers a chance. You know, if we can give them some clean water, all they need is the plants that they grow alongside. They live in complete harmony. Beavers are the sanest species I've ever known. They don't need us, but we like to be at least help them. We've always picked up trash, but now we've had focus since August on picking it up in the Salinas River where the beavers are living their life. I love beavers because without knowing it, they are the first watershed engineers. And they're the best. We love beavers. We love beavers.
All right. And then what you can do, I do want to share on the right is a mural. And right at this moment, as we're speaking, it is being painted on Brew Coffee House on El Camino in downtown Atascadero. I'm so excited. My whole family's there, probably covered in paint, helping with this. So if you want to stay up to date on what we're up to, definitely get on our mailing list at slowbeaverbrigade.com. We are still offering educational walks out to the Beaver Dam. I highly recommend. Send us an email. Let us know you want to do that. And yeah, just pay attention to the water in your area and let people know the beavers are good to a landscape. Right now, it's illegal in California to relocate a beaver, and a lot of most of the western states, they do a lot of beaver relocation when beavers start to flood an area that is like a highway or heavily used. And in California, when that happens, which happens in on Arroyo Grande Creek typically, they can't the levees there are so maxed out they can't handle any flooding event. The beavers will have to be killed and taken. But if beaver relocation was allowed, we could move them to an area that needed them. So that's another thing you can do. But I really appreciate everyone listening to this talk on beavers and inviting me here today. Thank you.